Who's your commander?
Good luck.
Equip.
Move to combat.
Resolves.
Now, before you attack
Does
me,
anyone have an answer?
well played.
Good game.
Hello everyone, DJ here. This is the Jumbo Commander YouTube channel, and today we're going to talk about 5 cards that I got totally wrong. I mean, I misevaluated them like crazy, but one thing that's good about looking back at cards that you might not have gotten correct is figuring out why you misevaluated them and learning something a little bit deeper about Magic. All right, let's jump right in. But before we do, I want to thank Mox Roasters. Mox Roasters makes great coffee, and it comes from people that love to play Magic. If you use the coupon code right here or the link in the description, you support the Jumbo Commander YouTube channel. So thanks. The first card that I got wrong was Jessica's Will. I know, Jessica's Will, played in over 100,000 Commander decks on EDH Rec. Included in 18% of the decks that can play it. This is a huge staple, and I misevaluated it. Let's take a look at Jessica's Will. Jessica's Will is 2 and a red for a sorcery. Choose one, and if you got a commander, you can choose both. The first one is add a red to your mana pool for each card in target opponent's hand. The other mode is exile the top 3 cards of your library. You may play them this turn. So I was most drawn to the draw effect. 3 mana, draw 3 in red is spectacular. So I was really excited about that. But you can only play them this turn, which meant I couldn't really play this as I developed my mana, like on turn 3, because what mana am I using to play it? You know what I mean? And so I thought, well, what good is a draw spell if I have to play it on turn 5 or turn 6, and it's not as reliable. So that wasn't something I was excited about. The mana production. Rituals are really solid. It can help you burst ahead in the game. And so I was looking a little bit closely at that. But 3 mana is a lot to put into a ritual, And it's not even guaranteed to return the big mana that you want. It's not a mana geyser, but it turns out I was wrong on both angles. Now, I saw the power if your commander was on the battlefield, because then you would have the card draw and the mana to use the card draw. But I felt like this was going to be super limited. Like, how likely are you to have your commander on the battlefield all the time? Maybe this would be great in like a Kess deck where you do have your commander and you're flashing this back or something like that. I just felt it was super narrow. Turns out I was totally wrong. Jessica's Will is just fantastic. So that's how I thought. Let's point out how I was wrong. So one thing that we do is we have a need for card draw in red, and it doesn't matter if it's impulse draw. I think one thing that I got in my head was that, this isn't as good as just drawing cards. And of course it's not, but just because it's not as good as just purely drawing 3 cards doesn't mean that this is bad, and it doesn't fill a needed niche in this color. The other thing is that I was too reliant on needing my commander on the battlefield. Maybe I was using my own red decks as a point of reference. And I've seen Jessica's Will's cast with the commander on the battlefield all the time. It's really not that big of a hoop to jump through like I thought it was. So what I learned from misevaluating Jessica's Will. The first thing is that when a color needs an effect, we can't just be super picky about what that effect is. Another thing is that we can look at the top end. I was thinking that we were never going to get both of these options, but clearly we can. Sometimes when we're evaluating planeswalkers, we don't look at the ultimate. Well, sometimes the ultimate is very attainable, and it should be a regular part of card analysis. Having both modes of Jessica's Will is totally doable, and I should have incorporated it into my analysis a little bit more, but I didn't. And similarly, I misevaluated the top end of this card by not thinking about having the commander out. I also misevaluated the top end of this card by the amount of mana it could produce. I was thinking that this card would be cast on turn 5 or 6, and people had 3 or 4 cards in their hand. Maybe if we're lucky, someone had 5 or 6 cards in their hand, And in that situation, the mana production just wasn't overwhelming. It wasn't enough to push this into something I wanted to play. But the top end of this card is people have 10 or 12 cards in their hand. I've seen that happen all the time. And so in trying to figure out how this card was played, I was misevaluating how much mana it could produce. So in conclusion, some of my initial evaluation was good. I was skeptical about the top end of this card, but I let that skepticism get in the way of seeing the true potential of what a powerhouse card Gaias Will could be. Let's talk about another card that I misevaluated, but kind of in the opposite way. It's Thrilling Encore. Thrilling Encore is 4 and a black for an instant. Put onto the battlefield under your control all creature cards in all graveyards that were put there from the battlefield this turn. Oh my gosh, so I saw the use of this card and I got blinders on and I was so excited about the top end of this card. I'm like, board wipes happen all the time. People trade away boards constantly. This is a guaranteed mass reanimation onto my side of the battlefield. Someone's gonna board wipe and then I'm just gonna collect all of the creatures over on my side, and that's actually gonna win the game. No one has any resources. I have gathered them all. This is such a game-breaking mechanic. And it has been on like 1 or 2 occasions, but what it's actually been for me is more of a pain. Look, I was either tapping out my mana and putting things on the battlefield, and then I was susceptible to that board wipe I was waiting for, and it was frustrating when it happened, or I wasn't putting things on the battlefield. I was holding up 5 mana, and then the board wipe wasn't coming. And then I was just sitting there with open mana and nothing to do. I also tricked myself into thinking that I could board wipe myself and then Thrilling Encore after it, getting all the creatures back. Sort of a build your own Rise of the Dark Realms or In Garrick's Wake or something like that. But all of my board wipes were like 4 mana, like for a Damnation. And then 5 additional mana for Thrilling Encore meant that I was rarely getting enough mana to pull that 1-2 combo off. So what did I learn from Thrilling Encore? Well, narrow cards that only work in very specific situations, like after a board wipe or after mass creature death, are best when they are lower in mana cost because you can keep up these effects more often. Having to hold up 5 mana was ridiculous. Gosh, I just had to get lucky that someone else was going to board wipe. I do think there's a situation where Thrilling Encore can be good, and that's in flash decks, specifically like black-blue flash decks. There are a lot of decks out there that just hold up mana, and I'm holding up mana for either flashing in creatures or counter spells or something like Thrilling Encore. And I actually think that that's a really good place for it because I'm not losing out on all of that mana by holding up my 5-drop. Instead, you know, I just flash out my next big flash threat and I'm still holding up that Thrilling Encore. So if you have interaction or narrow spells, consider playing them at the lowest mana cost possible so they're the most flexible. Thrilling Encore at 5 mana is actually incredibly inflexible. It's a narrow effect with a lot of mana. Ugh. The next mistake that I made was Bloodthirsty Blade. Bloodthirsty Blade is 2 mana for an artifact equipment. Equipped creature gets +2/+0 and is goaded. 1, attach Bloodthirsty Blade to target creature an opponent controls, activate only as a sorcery. I thought that this card was spectacular. I thought it was so good, and I thought that it was going to be a staple of our format because it would redirect the big creatures and send the small utility creatures over to their deaths away from you. And so I thought it was fun and political, and not a lot of people agreed with me. Oh my gosh. Did you know that I bought 100 copies of Bloodthirsty Blade? 100 copies. Granted that I didn't spend a lot of money for those 100 copies, but I certainly spent more than the 9 cents. It's worth 9 cents. It's worth now. Oh my gosh. That was just a huge mistake. Okay, so what is the reality of Bloodthirsty Blade? Well, the reality is that a lot of times it doesn't have a big impact. It might go to creature to someone else, but you know, there's easy ways around that. And in multiplayer games, it's not a really big problem if just one creature doesn't come at you. A lot of times you're dealing with more than a single threat. And a lot of times the utility creatures that I was so excited to send to their deaths, they would just tap for their mana in the first main phase, or activate before they attack someone, or attack someone that was open anyways. Honestly, there are fewer creature-based strategies in Commander than I kind of thought. And so sometimes I would play a Bloodthirsty Blade, and there wasn't even an easy creature to attach it to. And in many cases, that player wasn't even going to attack me to begin with. And so this big political equipment turned out to just be a card that let people do what they were going to do anyways. Look, I still like Bloodthirsty Blade, but I'm correctly evaluating it that is only truly effective in narrow situations. And a lot of times you want your equipment on your own creatures because you have your own equipment synergies. And so just attaching it to some random creature on the other side of the battlefield is only good in such specific situations. Like Craig was coming at you with an infect creature and you're like, no, go somewhere else instead. Then this is great, but definitely narrow. All right, there are 2 cards left on my list of big mistakes. Second to last is Gaia's Will. I was so hyped on Gaia's Will. Gaia's Will is no mana for a sorcery. It's got suspend 4 for a green. Until end of turn, you may play lands and cast spells from your graveyard. If a card would be put in your graveyard this turn from anywhere, exile that card instead. Okay, this is basically Yawgmoth's Will, and Yawgmoth's Will is a crazy card. Yawgmoth's Will is also $220. It's an unattainable card. And look, I know that you have to wait a little bit for Gaia's Will, but I thought paying less mana and waiting a couple turns was totally worth it for that huge effect that people are willing to spend so much money on. I was also super hyped because I felt like Suspend was a really good mechanic for this Yawg Will or Gaia's Will, because being able to cast a spell and have access to all your mana means that you can do more things. Sometimes you play Yawgmoth's Will and you just get a land and you don't quite have enough mana to use all the resources in your graveyard. But Gaia's Will, man, you play it early, and then by the time it comes off, you have all the mana and the graveyard resources to really go off. And look, I know that Yawgmoth's Will is really designed around combo, and it's hard to combo when you're suspending 4. People can kind of see your combo coming. But value Yawgmoth's Wills are still good, right? Well, people did not see it that way. Gaia's Will doesn't really see a lot of play. Even looking at Modern Horizons 2. I mean, Modern Horizons 2 was a great set. I mean, let's just go down and look at all the cards. Yeah, these are all fantastic cards. I wonder how far down I have to scroll to get to Gaia's Will. I mean, all the way down here is Archon of Cruelty. I mean, that's a good card. Oh, look, there's Resurgent Belief. So, you know, it's probably around here somewhere. Okay, no. Oh, no. Blacksmith's Skill? Okay. Fractured Sanity for all those mill decks. Yeah, that's good. Oh, there's Inevitable Betrayal. You know, that's got Suspend too. That's a pretty powerful card. It's got to be around here somewhere. Keep going. Squirrels. More squirrels. Uncommons. I have to load more. Okay. Oh, we're still going down. We're down. Okay. We're down to commons. There's Gaia's Will. Oh my gosh. It really wasn't seeing very much play. It's in only 2,500 decks. It's in 0% of the decks that can play it. Here's how I got it wrong. People don't want to play Yawg Will as a value Yawg Will. They want to play it in the most powerful way possible, and that's comboing off with it and getting all of the value possible. And when you telegraph it in green, you know, 4 turns before, you don't have any control over when it goes off. It's coming. And so you're probably not going to be able to play it in its most powerful way. So what did I learn? Well, there's an emphasis in this format on speed and control, and Gaia's Will is slow and unpredictable. I should have known this. I know that Regrowth is sometimes better than Eternal Witness, is sometimes better than Timeless Witness, because sometimes when you need something from your graveyard, or when you're tutoring it from your library with a demonic tutor, same kind of principle. If you need access to something, the cheaper it is, the better it is, because then you have more of a chance to be able to deploy that card. You have more access to it. You can get what you need when you need it. And Gaia's Will doesn't do any of that. So it just has to be a value engine, and sometimes putting your value off 4 turns is just too long. And finally, the last card that I misevaluated that I got totally wrong is Mox Amber. Mox Amber is 0 mana for a legendary artifact. Tap, add 1 mana of any color among legendary creatures and planeswalkers you control. What I thought that this was going to be too difficult to get going. You know, this only comes online after you've deployed your commander. I want a mana rock that will get me to my legendary spells, not only come online after my legendary is on the battlefield. It doesn't even properly ramp me into my first play, so how can this truly be fast mana? I mean, does this only belong in Isamaru decks where I know I'm going to have a fast commander? I mean, extra mana in the late game is fine, but I want my ramp early. Clearly, I was wrong. It's in about 45,000 decks, and it costs about $43. And there are a few ways that I was totally wrong. Number one is that there are a lot of individual commanders that look at this and really want it. Like Rograth, I thought about Isamaru, but Rograth, a 0 mana commander, yeah, that's out there. And of course, if you have a 0 mana commander, you'll take a Mox. You know what I mean? Like you just have a Mox in your deck. How about artifact synergies? Emery, Lurker of the Lock, or Oswald Fiddlebender. I mean, yeah, those come out early and can use the mana immediately. There's also things like Joyra, Weatherlight Captain, or Teshar. You know, cheap historic spells end up working really well in that deck. There's also legendary cards like Reki or Kethis the Hidden Hand, or cards that really want mana that are cheap like Kinnan, Bonder, Prodigy. And so as I go through this list of all of these commanders that I'm like, oh, you're right, that's good. That's good. I realize my mistake. I was thinking about it in terms of fitting into every deck when in actuality, this is a much narrower card. It doesn't belong in every deck, but it still belongs in a lot of decks. The other thing that I learned is that the need for fast mana is intense. It's voracious. You know, there are not a lot of access to really explosive mana in our format, and sometimes it commands a really high price tag. Like I'm looking at you, Mox Diamond. And so if you want your deck to have this explosive fast mana, you're gonna need to find some compromises. And Mox Amber does have some hoops that you need to jump through, but I was clearly misevaluating that. There are commanders out there that will immediately let you make use of Mox Amber or whole strategies that'll be great. And sometimes just being a 0 mana artifact is playable. That's fantastic. And so I need to stop being negative about a card and look at where it works. Like if I was looking at a Goblin, I wouldn't say like, oh, this doesn't go in every red deck. I would immediately look at Goblin strategies. So same thing goes with some of these cards. I can't just see them as narrow and then dismiss them. I need to find the commanders that they really, really work with because the power level is going to be over the top. All right, these were the 5 cards that I got totally wrong. Can you tell me in the comments what cards you guys got totally wrong, misevaluated? Maybe you made a huge spec on a card that bottomed out. I want to hear those stories in the comments down below. I want to thank Mox Roasters one more time. Click on the link in the video description to get yourself some delicious coffee from some Magic players. I also want to thank Cool Stuff Inc. They're the sponsor of the entire Jumbo Commander YouTube channel. And if you use the coupon code JUMBO5, you can save 5% off of Gaias Will. That's the card that you need to get. I still think it's good. Actually, like Bloodthirsty Blade for 9 cents. Like that's gotta be a good deal, right? Go pick yourself up some copies of that. All right, everyone. Thanks so much for watching. Thanks for commiserating with me with all of my mistakes. And I'll see y'all really soon. Bye-bye.